Hello, friends, and welcome. I'm Sarah Liz, and I have so many surprises for you today. I joined the Oh So Inspired collaboration hop in January, and this month, everyone is going to be inspired by me. I am so honored. It also means I'm going to be inspired by me. So here's my original card, and we're going to use the same layout. I want to grab some florals. And then this card was originally part of a color challenge, and I remember thinking that this particular palette was really hard for me. So I'm actually picking a different palette. This was from Craft Roulette. It was Succulent Garden Colors, and here's my Craft Roulette card. And so I really challenged myself to make a couple of cards with that palette. I've been doing this a lot lately where I've just been grabbing all the swatches of cardstock from different cards that I make, especially when it's not a color combination I would normally reach for. And so this one has several shades of green, little pops of pink and yellow. And I am going to do a little stenciling to try to make sure I'm hitting those major color themes. So this is a Hero Arts, I think it's a 5-piece stencil set. I'm not going to do any shading. We're going to keep this super, super simple. What I love about these stencils is that there's little, registration marks in the corner. So I taped everything down to my paper, and then I just filled in those little boxes, but I also put little marks around the corners. And so when I go to put the next stencil on, that will help me line it up. There's also some like engraving on that stencil too, so I know where the bottom corner is. It's really just a matter then of making sure that each layer is going to line up well with the next, especially when we get to things like the leaves. So here's the reveal of our first layer, and I just used a very light pink here. And then I went ahead and added my second stencil layer. I will say this one with the leaves does have a few really delicate places. It was not a problem at all while I was stenciling, but I did find as I was cleaning my stencils, I'm not always the gentlest, there were a few places that were catching on my cleaning cloth, so I would be aware of that. But you could use any stencil here or pattern paper, right? Grab some pattern paper you think is really pretty, but that is maybe in a color palette you normally wouldn't choose. And then for my darker pink layer, right, I took a few liberties here. This one is more like what's in that color palette. I'm coming in with the Hero Arts Reactive Glitz ink, and I can't remember what the shade is called, but there's only 6 colors. So this is the pink one, and it's got some shimmer in it that I think is really, really beautiful. I'm using a domed foam because I don't have blending brushes dedicated to these, and they would need dedicated brushes. But I will say there are tiny little holes in this stencil, and it was a little challenging to get the domed foam to press color through those, so I just took my time. For the final layer, I'm going to use some Lunar paste, and I realized when I opened this, I haven't used this in a while. So at the top, I've got some bits that are a little chunky, a little dried, but everything else down below was fine. These actually keep really well. When I went to close this up when I was done, I did put some press and seal over the top. I didn't put enough quite on my stencil to start with, so I'm just going to spread some on my large scraper here. This one I think is from Simon Hurley. Scrapbook.com has some, or if you look in the cake decorating aisle, sometimes you can get them cheaper. And I am just smushing this through the holes. I like using something that scrapes it all flat at the same time. It also picks up all those extra little bits, and I'll scrape that back into my jar. And I did off camera make sure it wasn't hanging out on that top edge there. But we've got this great shine both in that darker pink and in the silver. I cut this down to a full A2 panel, and then I'm going to cut 1/2 inch off of that side, and then I'm just going to sort of move it right along and cut a 2-inch strip. And so what I end up with is that little strip, that 2-inch strip from the original sketch, but then the outside pieces that I can also use. I embossed 2 pieces of light blue cardstock, an A2 and a 2-inch strip, using the Lush Leaves embossing folder from Spellbinders. I just wanted a little bit of extra texture, a little something in the background so it wasn't plain cardstock, because I can't leave well enough alone. And then this is a piece of black cardstock that is 5.5 by 2 1/8. So we get just the tiniest little bit of a border on it. This looks a lot like that original sketch. And I've lined that up so there's about a 1/2 inch on that left-hand side. And so you'll notice the other 2 pieces of that stenciled paper that I made sort of match the blue that's showing on that card. This is the perfect touch rectangles, and I am grabbing the smallest die that isn't a tag, and I've just added foam where it's not overlapping the stenciled piece because that's going to sit a little lower than the left-hand side, and I will glue that on. And while the original had an oval, I think the rectangle works really beautifully here. I like the little detail that's on there, but certainly you could just cut a rectangle by hand instead of using a die, and that works really well also. So I'm going to take my two leftover stenciled pieces and I'm going to glue them onto the edges of this other card base. And then if I create a little matte layer for my blue piece, you won't even be able to tell that the middle is missing. Instead of a full matte layer, I have used some scallops that came out from Spellbinders, I think recently. I'll show them to you a little bit later. I forgot here. I was just in the zone. I actually made 4 cards this day. I'll show you the rest of them at the end of this video. But what we're doing too is I have new sentiments coming out tomorrow that's a brand new size. And so we're going to sneak peek those as well. I've lined this up so the scallops are just barely showing on either side. And I'm going to add a little scrap of cardstock in the middle so it doesn't sort of dip down. I want it to be nice and even. And then I'll trim everything off along the top. While I'm finishing up putting this piece onto my card, I want to tell you a little bit more about the Oh So Inspired collaboration hop. This is once a month. It's always on the 20th. And we're choosing one member of that collaboration each month to be inspired by their cards, to case their cards, copy and selectively edit. And it has been such a delight to pick things that I think are wonderful, that maybe push me outside my comfort zone a little bit. It's put together by Call Me Crafty Al, who also does the sheet load of cards, if you're familiar with that. And so I will leave a link to the hop playlist in the description box below. I am not nervous, excited nervous, if that makes sense, to see what people chose from my cards on Instagram to be inspired by and how they made their own versions of them. If I get their permission, I may try to share in my Patreon some of their makes and links to their videos as well. I wanted a little extra decoration on these cards. I didn't do it to all 4. I'm just going to show you the 2, but I wanted to give you some ideas. I have been obsessed with these cacti. You saw them on my craft roulette card. They do not come with the sunglasses and faces, but you certainly could add those. Or I'll link below to this one, but also there's a Brutus Monroe cactus set that does have faces. I am just adding a little bit of foam where this is going to overlap the stenciled portion that's a little bit lower. And I'm making sure not to add glue all the way at the bottom. I want to be able to tuck my sentiment up under this and change that sentiment later if I choose to. So there is a mini kit with a bunch of different occasions coming out tomorrow. And this die perfectly coordinates, sort of accidentally, with that sentiment size. And so I'm excited to show you that as well. This is the flower cart die set. Y'all, I have been dying to use this one. I haven't made the cart itself yet, but it is adorable. For now, I'm just stealing a pot of flowers. I think it's so stinking cute. Like, Spellbinders gets me sometimes. I die cut constantly, but they'll come out with a set that just I'm over the moon about. This one is super simple to put together. All of these flowers here are connected, and then there's a back layer that it's sort of puzzle pieces on top of perfectly. I did put a little bit of darker blue ink on those flowers. I think it's a hydrangea. The fact that I know that is sort of shocking. But then there is another die that will cut just a few small flowers if you want to layer some extra dimension. So that's what I'm doing here. Nothing fancy. You could totally skip that step. And then I'll put it on top of the pot that I cut out of some matte silver cardstock. This one's going to overlap that rectangle quite a bit. And so I need to be really careful when I put this down to make sure I'm not adding glue on any of the parts that are going to overlap the rectangle, or I won't be able to slide a sentiment in and out. So you can see I have just a little bit of foam on that left-hand side, and I will peel off the backing. And then again, I'm going to add glue for the wiggle room, but I'm not putting it anywhere else. Okay, here comes our good sneak peek. The new sentiments have 2 pages. There's one with tick marks, so you can just cut them out with a trimmer. And then there's one where I've spaced them out a little bit more. It's a tight fit, but it's enough room to use this nested postage labels and tags. Okay, so I'm going to tape this onto there, and I'm going to trim very tightly around it. Otherwise, I won't have enough cardstock left to die cut out the other sentiments. There's a lot of room in the middle, but top to bottom, less room. So I die cut out 4 of them. I love the little added stitching detail. I have one that says thank you, one that says wishing you comfort, one that says happy birthday wishes, and one that says fabulous birthday wishes. But we also have St. Patrick's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day. We've got tons of options in there. If you're new to my channel, I release free printable sentiments all the time. Typically, they're in interchangeable circles that are 1 3/4 of an inch, or a rectangle that is 2 1/4 by 1 1/4. But I like trying different sizes sometimes, and I just thought this worked really nicely. You could put together a gift set and just leave those sentiments off and give them to somebody with a whole stack of different sentiment options. So here are the 4 cards that I made. The other stenciled panel uses a light blue background. Y'all be sure to check out the collaboration playlist in the description box below. And then be sure to come back tomorrow so you can download all those free sentiments. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I will see you next time.